and welcome to Odds Premier League Match Day 28. What a week for English teams in Europe. I guess you cannot be more lucky than Liverpool or having a better goalkeeper than Alisson, Tom.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that Liverpool outplayed Paris Saint-Germain for every minute of that game and should have won by more, right? Everybody? No? Well, they won, didn't they?
Yeah, well, if you have Alisson, of course, it's a big luck in your team instead of Donnarumma, who probably could have done much more in Elliot's goal. Well, this is a Premier League. Also, Aston Villa won away. Also, Arsenal won away. So good luck for the Premier League teams, or well done, actually, for Premier League teams in the Champions League next season. For sure, there will be for English teams. So, guys, let's analyze everything we have in the weekend in the Premier League with Tom Rennie. Of course, press the like, subscribe. Let's go on now with the show. And we start with a great game, actually, for the Champions League fight. Third against the fourth, Nottingham Forest against Man City. Of course, Man City favorites, but still really good odds if you are backing them. Only 1 point behind Nuno Espiritu Santos' men. Won in the FA Cup, also beat Spurs deservedly. So probably getting better. I won't be surprised if they end up finishing second in the Premier League. Forest is kind of the opposite. Fourth, winless in the last four. And even they struggle in the FA Cup against Ipswich Town. So kind of good odds, Tom, to back Man City here.
Yeah, I mean, they are in terms of, in general, backing Manchester City, but still, I don't have the confidence in them. Look, I still think 1.95 for a City win is quite low. And so if your gut says Man City, you base it on the Tottenham win, then yeah, I think it's fair to go for. But look, let's start with the two teams. Just briefly overview. I think that Forest, they play a very specific certain way, which we have discussed a lot this season. If they score the first goal in a game, in general, you're in serious trouble. Because they defend so deep, they defend so well. You've got people like Milenkovic and Murillo and Yates and several other players who are fantastic at defending without the ball, deep in their own half, stopping you getting through. And if you do lose that ball because you're taking risks, Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi, Chris Wood, going forward, you could be in trouble. That's been the story of the entirety of the season, right? Trouble is, they've been conceding the first goal in recent games. Ipswich Town in the FA Cup. Newcastle United took the lead against them. Fulham took the lead against them. Even Exeter City took the lead against them in the FA Cup. So they are just stumbling a little bit on their preferred way of playing. And they're not particularly used to, I've noted, I think most of us have, at chasing the game. That has been a problem when they are so rigid in the way they play. So in this particular game, the first goal is going to be absolutely crucial. In terms of Manchester City, I think you can see the new players are settling in. I think it's evident, as they told us at the time, we didn't doubt them, but we're just seeing it in practice, that they've been bought for next season. I know Marmoush scored the hat-trick against Newcastle a few games back, but sort of fades out again. We don't see him again. Then Jack Grealish is getting a start for the first time in yonks. And, you know, they're evidently building for next season. And they're evidently trying to get cover for Rodri in midfield, and they're trying to get the new players to work a new midfield system. They're evidently trying to move on from Kevin De Bruyne, who sadly is never going to get back to being the best player in English and European football. And I hope he goes to MLS and San Diego is the report, and goes on to be a massive success out there. And I think he will. Look at Wilfried Zaha for Charlotte this weekend. So, like, issues with Man City. Defensively, they're still conceding a lot of goals. They're conceding 2 against Liverpool, 1 against Plymouth, 3 against Real Madrid. They're still leaky defensively. The goalkeeper makes mistakes. And offensively, Haaland scores a couple, goes missing. A few issues there. So, firstly, the draw at 3.95 is really, really nice. I think you've got to really play well at Forest to win at Forest. And they are very good at in big games this season at getting results from them. Only 2 home defeats this season, 4 draws and 7 victories. They are the 5th best team at home statistically, points tally-wise in the Premier League this season. 7 behind Liverpool, who are the best home team in the division. And Man City still on a bit of a wobble. 3.95 for the draw. Love that. If you go Forest win, there's some really good money to be made here. So just to win 3.95 is quite high, considering the record I've just told you about. Them to win on my favourite bet, the group bet, 1-0, 2-0, 2-1 is 5.5. Incredibly high for a likely scoreline. A Forest victory and under 2.5 goals. That's a clean sheet, which they're exceptional at doing. And scoring 1 or 2 goals is 9, which was just wild odds, I thought. So I like that. And also the draw was my top tip. Do that with the under scoreline, which I fancy here. Under 2.5 comes in at 5.5. So, in fact, whatever you do here, it's a really good game to bet on because there is money to be made on everything because the bookies don't know. They don't know. I don't know. But every scoreline is going to give you some money here. But that's my suggestions for you.
Well, the under market looks good indeed. We saw, for instance, recently Forest nil, Arsenal nil. Leo Messi is going for Man City to win, and Alvin is saying hello to us. Next game, Brighton Fulham. This is also a great game, also very difficult to predict. Both teams really informed, both teams ahead in the FA Cup. Brighton beat Newcastle, Fulham beat Man United, and both also looking at the European spots. Brighton 5 consecutive wins in all competition. Fulham 5 wins and 1 defeat in the last 6 games. Tom, both teams are very good actually, and we like to bet on Fulham.
Yeah, we do. We love to bet on Fulham. And we love to bet on Brighton as well. I think both these teams this season have delivered lots of good wins for us across the campaign. My gut feeling, let me start with Brighton. Okay, let's start with them because they had a huge dip over Christmas and New Year, a massive dip in form, a massive dip in performance. And I think that coincided with the absence of Danny Welbeck, who had been, before his injury, so critical to everything Brighton were doing. I think they lost Lewis Dunk, who remains a doubt for this game. He's been out for some time and he'd been centre-half of Brighton for a decade. And so, yeah, you've got to kind of react to that. The midfield kept on changing. At the start of the season, that was a bonus. I think in this particular run, it was a negative. But now everyone has returned to form. Karim Mitoma, fitness and form. 𝐿𝐿𝐴 on the other side returns to form. João Pedro is fit and firing. Danny Welbeck scoring the winning goal last week against Newcastle. Defensively, they worked away to play without Lewis Dunk. Adam Webster has been outstanding in recent games. So loads of positives about Brighton. They've really turned a slump in the season around. Plus, it did help. They got a really lovely run of fixtures to build some confidence. Chelsea at home in the FA Cup, at Chelsea's lowest point of the season. Chelsea again a week later where they're beaten by even more. They go to Southampton, the worst team in the country, and thrash them. And then they have a couple of tough games against Bournemouth and Newcastle and find their way through them because there's confidence from previous, there's fitness, and there is something about Brighton right now. They're on a good vibe. And I think this game for them is going to be absolutely critical. If they get the win here, I think they will finish the season above Fulham. And that's crucial in their particular race because it could go down to 8th, 7th for European qualification. That is what Brighton want. That is what Fulham want. And this game, I think, could be decisive as to who finishes above who. In terms of Fulham, I thought they were atrocious when they lost against Crystal Palace a couple of weeks ago. It was maybe their worst performance of the season. A couple of friends of mine who are Fulham fans said they left 2-0 because there was just no hope. Plus, the queues for hummus outside can go on for hours at Fulham, so it's good to leave. But it was a terrible performance, and I thought that was the end of the season. It was over. Then they go to Wolves. Wolves are not a good team. We bet on Fulham to win, and they did. They then win against Man United in the FA Cup, and you think, oh, hold on. This is the team that beat Forest. This is the team that have had spectacular victories this season. But every time you think Fulham are going to do something, they find a way to mess it up. And maybe that is the player profile that they have in terms of Marco Silva's done an incredible job of rejuvenating, rekindling careers. Alex Iwobi, Raul Jimenez, Emil Smith-Rowe you could put in there. Issa Diop you could put in there, right? There's a whole bunch of players in this squad who have been rejuvenated by the time at Fulham. Adama Traore is the one I was thinking of. But in the big games, they have faltered many, many times. When the pressure is on, they have faltered, which is maybe why they've had to move from the top level down to the second tier in the Premier League. And because of that, I will just tip here for a Brighton victory. Won the last 2 games 2-1. Won 3 of the last 5 in all competitions 2-1. So I'm going to back it again. Brighton to win 1-0, 2-0 or 2-1 as a group bet is 3.25. 2-1 on its own is 8. I wouldn't usually say correct score, so find a way to cover yourself on that one, which I've just done with the group bet, but you could look the under 3.5 market, something like that with a Brighton victory, and then pick the 2 forwards. João Pedro anytime, 2.88. Danny Welbeck, love him, anytime, 2.75.
Okay, both teams to score for Avaya, 𝗵𝗵𝗵, Brighton to win, and draw for Timothy. Very tough game. Both teams looking at European spots. Next game, Crystal Palace, Ipswich. Crystal Palace doing a great second part of the season, alive as well in the FA Cup, and also great run in the Premier League, beating Aston Villa, Fulham, and United. So perhaps this season they finish above the 12th spot. Right now they are in the 12th spot. Actually, and Ipswich, well, it's almost game over. Tom, 5 points away from Wolves, still no wins. What to do?
Yeah, I mean, well, what we do is don't bet on them. That's the first thing we don't do. I mean, look, on Crystal Palace, to not have 𝗀𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗄 in this game is my only slight doubt about them, because he got high-flying kicked in the face by the Millwall keeper last weekend. It was reported he had 25 stitches to a wound on his head. And he has posted on social media to say he's all right and he's going to be okay. But of course, hopefully he's all right sort of psychologically. I'm sure he will be. Fingers crossed for that. But of course, how bad is the injury? Can he play? Could he be ripped open again? Is he comfortable? All that sort of stuff. So I'm not expecting 𝗀𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗄 here. And it might be a couple more weeks minimum until we see him again. So, you know, that does change something about Palace. He's scored 12 goals this season. And scored both in recent victories. The West Ham win, I think he scored both in another victory in this run as well. But, you know, a really good goal scorer. Gives a great physical presence alongside his 𝗲𝗲 and 𝗵𝗲𝗄. The front three has started working again. And if you take out the first 10 games of this season, and I know, you know, if my aunt had a wheel, she'd be a bicycle, fine. But if you take out the first 10 games, they'd be Champions League contenders. They'd be in that kind of trying to qualify for Europe run. So the second and third quarters of the season, Palace have been tremendous. So really good team. My only doubt is no Mateta. And their home form remains mysteriously bad. Like, they've won a lot of away games this season. Still just 3 victories at home this season. 5 draws is the problem. They struggle and have struggled to get over the line across the campaign in home games. Don't know why it is. Very, very strange. But I just don't see how they're going to struggle in this. Look, on Ipswich Town, they are going to go down and be maybe the favourites to come back up again in the Championship, because they never built a Premier League team. They've got players in this team that played for them, for this manager in League One, like 3 years ago. Rise, meteoric, incredible success, but they never built a Premier League team. And those chickens are coming home to roost right now. Beyond 𝐿iam Delap, the striker, who has scored, I think, 10 goals in the Premier League this season, there's nobody in this squad who's going to be playing in the Premier League next season. And so I think it continues to be a mission in pride salvaging for Ipswich Town, which this game could be. Look, don't discount the draw in this one, but I will take a Crystal Palace victory at 1.5. Not amazing. I think it'll be narrow if it is to be a Crystal Palace victory. They had a run of 2-0 victories of late. Doncaster Rovers, Fulham, West Ham. So for them to win 2-0, make that Crystal Palace and under 2.5 goals, 3.75. Again, I'm sticking with group bets today. They're really speaking to me. 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 2.75. Again, narrow victories this weekend, and I'd shade for Crystal Palace. And the other thing is Crystal Palace win to 0. I struggle to see Ipswich scoring. They are one of the lowest scorers in the Premier League this season with 26 goals scored. That's less than 1 goal per game. And Palace have 𝗀𝗏. They have Henderson in goal. They have Mark Gay. Really good defenders, really good unit, low-scoring game, low-scoring home win.
Leo Messi is also telling us Crystal Palace to win 2-0. 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗶𝗄, Crystal Palace playing with great confidence, and they will win. And 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗄 is also liking this Palace team a lot, but Tyson is also highlighting the good value on the draw. But of course, it's impossible to trust Ipswich. Good luck to find good bets in the next game. Probably I want to avoid, from the betting perspective, Liverpool, Southampton. Liverpool to win is only 1.1. Probably they are going to have much more the ball, the possession, as they had in the Parc des Princes. They suffered a lot in Paris, Tom, so I'm sure they will also suffer in the second leg. It's time for rotations for this game to play, to completely change the squad, basically, to face Southampton.
Yeah, look, and that is the only even slight doubt in this game, is that the last time Arne Slot rotated heavily was the game against Plymouth, and of course they were eliminated from the FA Cup that day. The second string is not as strong as the first, but I think you have to drop everybody, really. They have a 13-point lead, and they have a real tough game against Paris Saint-Germain to come next week, and they're playing the worst team in the country who've got less than 10 points. So I expect heavy rotation, but I won't mention too much about Southampton. We've done it quite a lot. It's not a Premier League squad, and the manager's come in trying to salvage a desperate situation. For a few games, he offered something. The win at Ipswich, the performance of Man United, great. But in the end, exactly the same as Ipswich, not have a good enough squad at the start of the campaign, not winning in 10 or 12, whatever it was, start of the season, never stood a chance. So, look, it depends on how much they rotate. I'd expect Darwin Núñez to start. He'll be more than good enough to score a couple of goals against Southampton. I'd expect 𝐿𝐵𝐺𝐻 to start, and Connor Bradley, I don't think, is fit for this one. So probably Trent might have to start. Jarrod Quansah will play. These are still players more than good enough to beat Southampton. So Liverpool win 1.14. Sure, take it. How are we going to make some money? We've got to handicap it. The only doubt would be if they're 3-0 up in this game, do they take their foot off the gas? I think they absolutely will and should, but that's what you have to go for if you're going to bet on this. So a large group bet of 3-0, 3-1, or 3-2 comes in at 4.33, which is actually not too bad because Southampton have showed in recent weeks they can nick a goal, scored against Bournemouth, scored against Man United, won against Ipswich. And you know how many times you've seen in games like this, Liverpool are just not switched on for the first 3 to 5 minutes, and there's a little goal nicked by somebody. Can you just imagine Southampton nicking a goal in the first couple of minutes, 𝐬𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿 or something, bang, 1-0, and then Liverpool have to come from behind to win it. You can see it happening. It's happened so many times. Minus 2.5 handicap is 1.83. Not great. If you do want to take that Liverpool win from behind, I'm not sort of saying this is going to happen, but we have seen it so many times. You will win this bet maybe 4 times a season. Liverpool win from behind is 7.5. If you want to make some money on this game, you've got to go for something like that because I don't think it's going to be 6 or 7-0 because of the Paris Saint-Germain game next week.
Indeed, of course, the eyes are on the Champions League. Liverpool fan here, Mum Spaghetti. This is an under and 2-1 or 2-0. Southampton has higher odds than Liverpool titles. Well, Liverpool have out of titles. Yeah? Liverpool win no matter who is playing. Well, Darwin Núñez, Elliott, for instance, the heroes of the Parc des Princes should start this game, but very tricky one, this one. And perhaps we see better odds in the next game, Brentford, Aston Villa, another successful team in Europe, Aston Villa, but they suffer not much more than Liverpool, actually the same, much more than Arsenal, because it was tough, the game in Bruges, but they were able to punish the mistakes from Bruges defenders, and they got themselves a great win. What a season again for Unai Emery, for Aston Villa, especially in the knockout competitions, in the FA Cup, in the Champions League. And this one, Tom, could be very tricky because it looks like Aston Villa, of course, they don't have the squad to pay attention and to compete in all competitions. And despite the latest results of Brentford at home, this is a tough team to beat in their home stadium.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think this has been proven out across the season with Brentford that they are more than good enough to beat the top 10 in the Premier League. The other way around, more than good enough to beat the bottom 10 in the Premier League, not good enough to beat the top 9. They're going to finish 10th this season. I feel convinced of it. But it's games like this that maybe could upset that, mainly because Villa's form after Champions League this season has been so poor. They have struggled to pick up wins. They've struggled to pick up results. They've lost some surprise games. And even though it looks comfortable following the Club Brugge game in midweek, they will not want to rest on the laurels of that. I think they would happily throw this one in, grind out a draw as best they possibly can to make sure they're through in the Champions League and get onto a Champions League quarterfinal, which would be a huge achievement. And with Unai Emery in charge, who knows where they're going to go from there. I mean, look, in terms of Brentford, it's amazing what they've done this season, considering not only did they lose Ivan Toney in the summer and not really replace him, of course, they brought somebody in, got injured immediately, and we haven't seen him all season. But Johan Wissa and Brian Mbeumo have really, really stepped up. Christian Norgard in midfield is low-key one of the best leaders in the division. And even when they lost Ethan Pinnock, and he's looked a bit rusty recently, sure, but such a crucial player for Brentford, and they've lost Christopher Ajer at times. Sepp Vandenberg, I think, is out for this one. They've lost so many players to injury this season. They've continued to keep ticking over, getting results, beating teams. Strode against Everton last week in the second half. I think Everton looked the stronger of the two teams in the back end of that. But they were great in the win against West Ham. They were great in the win against Leicester. Really impressed in that away victory against Crystal Palace and beyond Tottenham in the last 5. They played really well. So never discount Brentford and their home record this season. I know they have wobbled, as you mentioned, in the second half of the campaign, but they still have 7 home victories. They've won half their home games, 3 draws and 4 defeats. And those defeats against like Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, right? Can happen to anybody. So, and Tottenham's the other one. That was an anomaly, I guess. In terms of Aston Villa, the issue for me with Villa is, are they going to get Pau Torres fit ever? Like, that, to me, is the big issue with Aston Villa. Tyrone Mings, again, in Bruges this week, showed what a sort of calamitous player he is at moments. A good player, but he makes these ridiculous decisions, makes terrible mistakes. Again, it was at Brugge in November is where the goalkeeper passed him the ball and he picked it up and they gave a penalty. And at the midweek game, looked like a handball when he cleared that ball as it was going in the back of the net, which sort of wasn't decisive, so it wasn't given. Like, he keeps making little errors like that. Defensively, they keep making errors like that. And they're going to need to rotate. You're going to need to rest someone like Youri Tielemans here. You're going to need to maybe rest Ollie Watkins, who's so crucial to what they do. Maybe we get a start for Rashford because they rotate the front line. Maybe drop Leon Bailey, who struggles to play 2 games in a week. It's a better squad now than it was first half of the season, but they are still a shallow squad that will struggle in a game like this. So take the Brentford win at 2.35. I'd really fancy them considering their run of results, just 1 defeat in the last 5. Brentford to win and both teams to score, 3.5 is really, really nice. I do think that defensively, Brentford always seem to concede something soft. Look at Crystal Palace and several other games this season where they've conceded a soft goal. I also like 𝐬𝐭𝐴 to score and Brentford to win, brings you in at 4. The only other thing is don't discount the draw. Look at the Everton game last week. It's all about desire. Do Brentford have it to get over the line? If the game is 1-1 with 5 to go, if you're going to pick someone, you'd pick Brentford, but you wouldn't be surprised to see the game peter out with that scoreline.
Draw for 5 is pretty good. Aston Villa will rotate 1x plus both teams to score. Also, draw no bet for Brentford for Man Spaghetti. So everyone thinks, of course, Aston Villa will rotate and there will be goals. And the late kickoff on Saturday is Wolves Everton, very important for the relegation battle, especially for Wolves, still only 5 points away from the bottom 3, but they have this week this game, which is winnable against Everton, and then they have Southampton. So probably in the next 2 weeks, they can be completely safe. But Tom, it's not easy to bet against Everton. No defeats in the last 6 Premier League games.
The incredible thing about this is that Wolves have, I think, according to our friends at Opta, a 5 or 6% chance of relegation from this point. The trouble is, 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻 got himself sent off last week in the FA Cup game against Bournemouth in the very last minute of extra time. What was he doing? Moronic triple attack on Milos Kerkez of Bournemouth for absolutely no reason. It's a 3-game suspension, so he's going to miss this game. He's going to miss Southampton, and he misses West Ham that comes after that as well. And look, very winnable game. It was very, very winnable, but very losable for Wolves as well, because beyond 𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐻, yeesh, this is not a great team. This is a team that without him would have already, to my mind, have been relegated this season, because he has just carried them on his back, got them out of holes so many times this season. Goalkeepers, both of them, weak. Defense, weak. Midfield, weak. Wingers, weak. Forwards, weak. All the way across the team. But they've got 𝐿𝐴𝐻. So they were going to be all right. And now he's out. And of those players that I don't particularly rate, I think 𝐵ADU came in the January window, done all right. He could be missing for this one. Gonzalo Guedes a doubt for this one. Rodrigo Gomez a doubt for this one. We haven't seen 𝐜𝐭𝐿𝐧𝐧𝐞𝐜 all season. We haven't seen Mosquera all season. Argue amongst yourselves about how good they are. So it's such a huge game. Because win this, everyone else is going to lose. They're 8 points clear. I would up that 5% chance to 1% chance of going down. But if they lose it and then go into Southampton next week, and let's say miracle upon miracles, one of the other teams has won, all of a sudden it's very nervy and there's no 𝐿𝐴𝐻. Going to another week, all of a sudden it's very nervy and there's no 𝐿𝐴𝐻. So it's a huge game. So decisive. It's so stupid and so irritating, I'm sure, for Pereira, the manager, to not have 𝐿𝐴𝐻 for this one. And in terms of Everton, you mentioned it there. I mean, the form has been tremendous. Beyond the Bournemouth game in the FA Cup, what David Moyes has done is make them very hard to beat. They have nicked some victories, including the one against Crystal Palace. But in general, what he has done is stopped teams walking over Everton. He's given them a chance in every game. And actually, against Brentford, if Beto had his scoring boots on, they could have won that 3 or 4-1. He was really struggling in front of goal that day. It was the old Beto, not new Beto, not Moyes Beto. But O'Brien has worked at right back. They've gone really defensively solid. O'Brien, Branthwaite, and 𝗀𝐿𝐿𝐿 with another, probably 𝗵𝐿enko in the back line. He's made them very solid. Get past us. The midfield is incredibly hard working with 𝗀𝗻𝐿𝐿𝐿 and the like in central midfield. He's getting a tune out of 𝗀𝗻𝐿𝐿, goals more or less out of Beto, and he's doing it without Ndiaye and McNeil, the only two creative players that Everton actually have. So incredibly commendable what Everton have done, and they are 100% safe. If 𝐭𝐿𝐿 was in this game, I would have said Wolves victory and Wolves and 𝐭𝐿𝐿 score, because it happens all the time. It's happened like 8 times this season. 𝐭𝐿𝐿 has scored and they've gone on to get something from the game. When they've won, he has scored in those games. But without him, screams draw. 3.3. Absolutely take that. Everton have drawn 3 of the last 4. Wolves drew last week. Screams it at 3.3. If you are going to take a winner here, take Everton to win at double your money, because they're the team that have actually got goals in their lineup. I can't even believe I'm saying this. Everton have goals in their lineup, and so you've got to go for them to win. And also, if you're feeling a little bit more cautious, Everton draw no bet is 2. That'll cover it if you fancy it. But it just screams low-scoring draw to me.
Actually, 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 is also going for Everton draw no bet. Timothy and Benjamin, Everton to win, and everyone agrees. No 𝐿𝐿𝐿, no party without 𝐿𝐿𝐿, no chance. So everyone is going in the same direction. For Sunday, we have 3 games: Chelsea, Leicester City. Leicester should win here after beating Southampton. The bad run is over, so the schedule is now easy for them. 5th in the standing, so they will play Champions League next season. And again, this is a must win. They are doing way better at Stamford Bridge, 3 consecutive home wins than away. And for Leicester, of course, Tom, losing the hope. You said it long time ago. And look at the schedule. Chelsea, Man United. Well, that's easy. Man City and Newcastle are next.
Yeah, they're coming out of the run of results where they had to get wins. Leicester against strugglers and out of form teams. And the run is loss. Look, let's start with Chelsea briefly. Cole Palmer's lack of form in the second half of the season and the injury to Nicholas Jackson has been critical for their sort of downturn in form. Christopher Nkunku does not want to be there, and he's not a central striker, so that's something that they'll need to fix in the summer if they can find a home for Nkunku away from Stamford Bridge. We've got to find a way not to rely so much on Cole Palmer, as Enzo Maresca said a couple of weeks ago. And the midfield remains a problem because you cannot have Romeo Lavia in a Premier League squad. He is not physically capable of being a Premier League footballer. And so if you want the midfield to be Lavia and Enzo Fernandez with Caicedo at fullback and coming into midfield, which worked brilliantly for a few weeks, Lavia can't be one of the 3 because he simply cannot stay fit. And we knew that when he moved to the club. He's barely played a game in 4 years, Romeo Lavia, and it's continued throughout this season. So there's issues there, plus the goalkeeper issues got to be solved in the summer. But look, that's all for later. Right now, get these wins against the rubbish teams, and they will qualify top 5. And England are going to get 5 in the Champions League next year. It's a guarantee at this point. So, look, briefly on Leicester, I went to the West Ham games last week or the week before. They've given up, totally given up. Ruben Van Nistelrooy, I don't want to be too harsh on him because, he got offered the job. Why not take the job? I'm sure he believes in his own abilities, but he doesn't have a great deal of coaching experience. He doesn't have a coaching team behind him. He sacked the first team coaches last week, but he can't bring in his own people because he's not got his own people. He didn't get backed in the transfer market. And this, for me, is probably the hardest job in English football right now, keeping Leicester in the league. And that was true when he took the job, and it's true now. But still, despite those caveats, the performances have been diabolical. Against a West Ham team who were fragile, offered nothing. Against Brentford at home, truly atrocious performance. Bit of fight against Arsenal, but crumbled in the end. Bit of fight against Man United, crumbled in the end. The thrashing against Everton was appalling. Do they have Premier League players? No. Do they have a deep squad? No. Do they have a good manager? No. Are they going to stay up? No. Are they going to win this game? No. Chelsea win, 1.23. Fine. Chelsea win to 0, 2.1. It's okay. The only other thing I'd look at is the Chelsea hammering. They beat Southampton 4-0. Look at a similar scoreline. If they had Palmer in form and Jackson fit, I definitely would say 4 or 5-0. Without them, I'm a bit more sceptical, but go for it. 4-0 Chelsea.
Chelsea to win and Cole Palmer to score. Timothy, Chelsea might just lose. Very weird team. They are a weird team, but I don't see them losing to Leicester City. Much better game next one. Tottenham Bournemouth. The Spurs also focus in the Europa League tie against AZ and lost to Man City in the last Premier League game. Bournemouth want to win this game because they are very close to Europe, even if they lost to Brighton and Wolves in the Premier League, also doing a great campaign, still alive in the FA Cup. This is a very good game and very tricky, I guess, Tom, to predict, to look at the odds. Actually, they just switched because I saw Bournemouth as the underdog, 2.8. Now it looks like it's Tottenham, the underdog.
But, I mean, this will keep changing. I mean, you're right to notice that because I think this is a game that's so up in the air for both teams. I mean, look, on Tottenham, there has been a bit of a revival. I think the performance at Ipswich was very encouraging. Brennan Johnson returning to a bit of form. I think that there were some struggles against Man City, but I think they played reasonably well in that game. They were good against Man United, played okay against Aston Villa. We're still waiting for Van de Ven and Romero to resume their partnership. We've seen kind of nothing from the new centre forward in the absence of Richarlison and 𝗛𝗏𝗏𝗀𝗏 Solanke. And the midfield looks unbalanced, as it has all season. There's been times where Bissouma, Sarr and Maddison as a trio has worked, but then it hasn't. There's been time where Bentancur has delivered in games, but then he hasn't. There's been times where Udogie has played well at fullback, and then he hasn't. The same with Jed Spence. Vicario being back has made a big difference. He is significantly their best goalkeeper, one of the best goalkeepers in the league, for my money, Vicario. So good to have him back. But it's still tricky to bet on Tottenham at this moment in time, and the form suggests that. It's 3 defeats and 2 victories in the last 5. Don't draw many games, Tottenham, which is, I think, one of their biggest problems. You know, one of the things that I always think of Sam Allardyce. He used to say, respect the point. So if you couldn't win, you make sure you do not lose. It's a very don't get relegated mentality, sure. And Postecoglou does not have that. Them and Southampton, the lowest amount of draws in the Premier League this season, just 3. But that has led to 14 defeats for Tottenham. They don't know how to hang in games. They don't respect the point. They go win or bust. The trouble is, it's been more bust than win across the season. In terms of Bournemouth, huge couple of weeks coming up now. This is it. You know, they have done so well with the unbelievable injury list, the sale of Solanke, all of it to get where they are. Iraola has coached a great team. There are players that are playing way, way above what we expected. I think about 𝐿𝐭𝐴 at fullback and Howson at centre-half and Evan Nielsen up front and Semenyo and Utara and several players who've been outstanding this season. I think I do expect from Tyler Adams, that's why I didn't put him in this list, I do expect him to be a top-quality central midfielder, but I didn't really expect it from someone like Ryan Christie, who's been one of the best players in the league this season, one of the most hard-working players in the division. So, look, loads to like about Bournemouth, but win this game, results go their way, they could be 5th this weekend. I think it would be 6th, actually, on goal difference to Chelsea. So right up in that mix for Champions League qualification. Incredible story. Then it's Man City in the FA Cup. Man City at home, for them, so winnable. It's so winnable. And if Man City get knocked out of the FA Cup, this will be the best year for the FA Cup since Leicester won it. Before that, for a decade. Anyone but Man City, and this is going to be a great season in the FA Cup. And why not Bournemouth, who have never won the competition? So, huge couple of weeks. Do they have it in them to get over the line? This is Champions League semi-final and final stuff for Bournemouth, right? This is as high as they have ever been in the English game in their century of history. Can they get over the line in these games to set up an April and May, which could be historic, meteoric, incredible? We're going to find out this weekend. This is the kind of game, if you win it, it changes absolutely everything. And I think they have every chance of winning, and I think the odds just about favour them winning for the reason I mentioned, that Spurs do not draw games. Because it screams draw in terms of the form guide. It screams draw in terms of the pressure on Bournemouth. But Tottenham don't draw. So take the Bournemouth win at 2.55. I think goals in this game, there will be goals in this matchup. More often than not, both of these teams do score. Both teams score on over 3.5 goals in the match. No scoreline, 2.1. Both teams score on over 4.5 goals in the match. Bit bold, 3.25. Bournemouth win 3-0, 3-1, 3-2, 7.5. Draw no bet Bournemouth 1.8. Those are the bets I like. pick out some players too. Semenyo's in great form. Evan Nilsson is back fit. I just feel like Bournemouth are going to have it to beat Spurs in this game with both teams scoring.
Actually, 𝐿𝐿𝐵𝗵𝐿 is also going for both teams to score an over 3.5 goals. Bournemouth to win and over 2.5 goals for Timothy. And Bournemouth to win for 𝗵𝗿𝗂. Busy schedule for Tottenham in the Europa League, indeed. Playing AZ. Also, Man United Arsenal is our next game. Both playing European football. And perhaps Arsenal fans want to repeat the 7-1 scored in Eindhoven. In Old Trafford, well, the bookies are placing, of course, Arsenal favorite 1.8. I don't think Arteta is going to rotate for the second leg of the Champions League. Oh my God, if we are talking about problems going forward and scoring for Arsenal, you just need a defense like PSV, and perhaps Man United is also that team. Remember that they are facing Real Sociedad in the Europa League and probably putting all the effort in this tie, Tom. So looks like a great bet back in Arsenal here.
Yeah, I mean, you have to take Arsenal, right? Who on earth is going to bet on Manchester United right now? I mean, next season, sure, we'll see how it goes. But right now, they are untouchable in terms of betting. I mean, we don't know as we record this how the Thursday night went. The entire season is on the Europa League for Man United. The league is totally irrelevant. If they finish 13th or 16th, who cares? It does not matter. It's all about winning the Europa League, where even though they're not great, they still have probably the strongest squad with Tottenham still in the competition. We can argue about some of the other teams, but in terms of wages, experience, all of that, Man United remain a very strong squad for that competition. The trouble is they're playing so badly. So badly. You know, we don't need to rehash the whole thing here, but Ruben Amorim's got an idea and they're doing it regardless of the reality. And this whole conversation about, oh, he's playing this way to get him trained for next season. Well, they keep saying all these players are going to not be there next season. So why are you training players for next season who aren't going to be there next season? It makes no sense what he's doing at all. And without Bruno Fernandes, who pulled them back into the game against Fulham last week, I'm not sure that we've got a single point in any of the games they played in the last few months, which is incredible, really. Look, they've got injuries, but so do Bournemouth. So have Tottenham. You know, West Ham have not had a striker for 3 months. We could do all the teams, right? Probably apart from Liverpool have had injury issues this season. Newcastle are dropping like flies right now. So everyone's got problems. And Man United are no different. But the way they've been set up, the way they've been playing, and the way Ruben Amorim has got them set up is their big problem. And without Bruno Fernandes, I can't see anything in this team to suggest they're going to get something from this game. In terms of Arsenal, you mentioned it. The win in midweek was incredible. And because of that, they can rest players for next week. I would expect the youth team to play in the Champions League next week at home. Even if they were to lose 4-0 on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever the game is in the Champions League next week, they would still be through. So strongest team here, get the game won, move on from there. There's a possibility that Bukayo Saka might be back in 3 or 4 weeks. And so if they get through in the Champions League, could be a great end to the season. And if they've got Saka and Liverpool do stumble, there is every chance they go on a tear April and May, get that gap real tight by the time they face Liverpool the May 10th weekend, I think it is. So huge game this for Arsenal. Strongest possible team. They will win this. 1.83, fine, take it. Arsenal win without conceding. Who on earth is going to score for Manchester United? Højlund? 𝗀𝗋cie? You joking? And who's going to... Arsenal have a very strong defence, as we discussed a lot on this programme. They have one of the best defences in European football, 23 goals scored. It's the best defence in the Premier League this season. They concede less than 1 goal per game. It'll be the strongest possible defence, best possible midfield. United aren't going to score. Arsenal win to 0 is 2.75. Wouldn't be surprised to see this game start slowly, as they've both played in Europe in midweek. Going to be a very similar team midweek to weekend. Draw at halftime. Arsenal go on to win, 4.5. 1-0 to the Arsenal is 6. Group bet, also like 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, doubles your money. The only thing, if you want, on Man United is Fernandes anytime at 5. But it's a low-scoring, comfortable Arsenal win.
Arsenal Asian handicap -1 for 𝐿𝐿𝐵𝗵𝐿. Narrow win for Arsenal, according to Timothy. And of course, the schedule favors Arsenal. Not only the schedule, but the result in Eindhoven. So they can put their best team at Old Trafford and have the players rested for the second leg in the Champions League. And for Monday, we have another good game. It's West Ham Newcastle, very tough one to bet on. West Ham, the underdog, back-to-back wins and without conceding against Leicester City and Arsenal. And Newcastle still fighting for the European spots, although they are not in great form. It's 3 defeats in the last 4 Premier League games and also out of the FA Cup against Brighton.
Yeah, I mean, let's start at West Ham. I don't think their win against Leicester was particularly impressive, though I do think the win against Arsenal was, and we certainly never saw that coming. I think what Graham Potter has done is what a lot of managers do when they come into struggling teams. He has just made them tough to score against. And that was the big issue, really, with 𝗲𝗿𝗄. Before Potter came in, it was so easy to score against West Ham. The organisation was appalling, whatever 𝗲𝗿𝗄 was trying to do. And Potter has made some mistakes in these opening weeks at West Ham, like going back to the other formation with 4 at the back against Brentford was an error. You know, he's had no strikers in some games. Crystal Palace was the obvious example. So when they went 1-0 down in that game, never looked like scoring. But what he's done, he's gone 5 at the back. And he's got Todibo playing football for 60 minutes a game. I mean, he seems so weak, Todibo. If they could get 90 minutes out of that guy and make him a Premier League player, incredible potential there, sure. But you can't keep taking your best sort of defender off every game on the 60th minute to bring on someone kamikaze like Mavropanos. You just can't keep doing that. So that's a problem. Aaron Cresswell's 35 in that back 3. Great experience. Good defensive work against Arsenal, certainly. But again, long-term problems. But at the moment, solid, low block, no mistakes, and they're also passing the ball around, which they never did a great deal against 𝗲𝗿𝗄. So look, they're pretty unwatchable, West Ham, but for different reasons, because they're just trying to get the points and work some stuff out. No Paqueta still, I don't think, for this game, but not sure how big of an issue that is. He hasn't got a great deal of creativity in the midfield of James Ward-Prowse, Souček, and Edson Alvarez. Mohamed Kudus has done nothing pretty much all season long. You know, it's almost like you could say his lights have gone out, eh? Something like that this season. That was for you. So, like, it just depends on what the front line is. I think the same team against Leicester, they'll try and get through it. In terms of Newcastle, 2 years ago, we were in the Carabao Cup final. What happened? They collapsed going into that cup final because there's so much pressure on Newcastle winning that competition. They haven't won a trophy since the 50s. In England, the FA Cup back then, 58 or 59, something like that. And it's happening again this time around. They're losing soft games. They're conceding goals. The focus isn't quite there. And now the injuries are racking up. No Sven Botman again. Just such a blow for Sven Botman. He missed all the season, came back, injured again. Lewis Hall is out for the rest of the season. That was confirmed yesterday. Anthony Gordon getting himself sent off for that stupid push. There's doubts about Alexander Isak. If there's any doubt about him, you've got to hold him for next week and win the Carabao Cup final. Without him, they don't win that game against Liverpool under any circumstances. So if there's a doubt, I'd worry about that. Joe Linton's been missing recently. They've had midfields of like Longstaff and Joe Willock. Look, I'm not trying to be critical here, but they're not as good as the players they've replaced. So it's a tricky one for Newcastle. I can see why they're favourites. I think they won this 5-1 last season, something like that. But the West Ham sort of mini stop conceding revival and Newcastle focus elsewhere on the injuries makes me think draw 3.79 is your big bet for this one. And that is only going up. Really, really like that. West Ham win at 3.25. Look, why not? The odds are good. Why can't West Ham nick a victory? They did beat Newcastle earlier in the season. Might be the first time they actually do a double over in this terrible, terrible West Ham campaign. That's at 3. If West Ham do win, there won't be many goals in it. If they concede 2, they will lose this match. So under 2.5 goals and a West Ham win is 7.5. If you go Newcastle, the odds are quite good. But if you are going to do it, I think they'll score a few goals. Look at the Forest game. Look at the Birmingham City game in the FA Cup. It'll be like that if they win. That's 3.25 for an over 2.5 victory for Newcastle.
Well, if Isak is playing, people are back in Newcastle. If he's not, be careful. I'm back at West Ham. Great odds. The lights goes off if Isak is not playing for Newcastle. I don't know what the hell is going on with my lights today. Well, Tom is going to enlighten us very soon with his ACCA and his safe bet. Before, of course, check our Oddspedia website and post your tips. There you can win up to €1,000. And we have also a tipster competition with the Premier League. There you go. You can check it out. and you can see even who is winning. And also you can participate in Rivals, our tipster competition, our custom tipster competition, where you can create your own competition and challenge your friends. There you go. Well, Tom, as I said, your safe bet, which I think is very safe.
Yeah, maybe the safest bet in European football this weekend. Liverpool, top of the league, to beat Southampton, bottom of the league, 1.14.
ACCA?
3-team ACCA this week. I've won the last 2 ACCAs, so I'm feeling like I'm on a roll now. I'm feeling brave. So I'm taking Brighton to win against Fulham, which is somewhat daring. Chelsea to win against Leicester, because Leicester is so bad. And Crystal Palace to beat Ipswich. I would have put Liverpool in as well, but it didn't really change anything in terms of the ACCA. So the 3 I've got brings you in at 3.38.
Okay. Are you sure it's that low? I think it should be higher, actually, the odds.
I mean, that's what came in with the supercomputer. But if it's better than that, great news for all of us.
Check Oddspedia, and there you can do your own ACCA, because I feel it should be even higher. Well, Tom, much appreciated. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Arrivederci.